I'm Don Wiggins from the Paradise Television Network, and today we're talking to doctor, philanthropist, historian, Mr. Marvin Dunn. Marvin, it's a joy to talk with you. I heard so many wonderful things about you and the things that you've done here in the state of Florida, especially Rosewood. Are you from Rosewood? Tell us about Rosewood.
I'm not from Rosewood, Don, but the Rosewood story captured me about 20 years ago.
20 years ago.
I went there about 20 years ago for the first time. I knew generally that this all-black town, there was one white family living there, had been burned to the ground by a white mob in 1923 over a lie. Now, Rosewood is about 40 miles west of Gainesville, just to give you a sense of where it is.
Okay.
And then 9 miles before you reach the Gulf of Mexico, not the Gulf of America. The Gulf of Mexico.
Okay.
On Highway 24, that's Rosewood. Gainesville, 40 miles to the east, and then Cedar Key and the Gulf of Mexico, 9 miles beyond Rosewood. So Rosewood was a town that evolved because of the rosewood trees. Don, rosewood trees are very old growth trees. They're cypress trees. It takes them hundreds of years to grow. But the wood is gorgeous. My aunt had a rosewood chest. Red, pink, orange, beautiful colored wood. Very, very valuable wood. So a lumber company went in there right after the Civil War, started taking out the rosewood trees. Very, very successful in doing that. And then once the rosewood trees were gone, all these black folks had come in to be a part of the operation. The white folks left when the trees were all gone, and the black people stayed. And the black folks bought land, they leased land, they started businesses. Rosewood was doing fine until that January of 1923. This white woman lived in Sumner, a little town 2 miles beyond Rosewood before you get to Cedar Key. Her name was Fannie Taylor. And Fannie Taylor was a married woman. Her husband worked at the sawmill in this little town, 2 miles from Rosewood. And Fannie had a relationship with a white man who worked on that train that came between Gainesville and Cedar Key every day. Train came through once a day. And Fannie's husband had to go into work early. He sort of lit up the fires for the sawmill. So he was out of the house early in the morning, her husband was. So this man, Fannie's boyfriend, would come in on that train, get off, have his time with this married woman. As the train went back, he'd get on the train and go back to Gainesville. And then one morning, he beat this woman up while her husband was at work. They got into a fight. And she had to have a reason to explain to her husband why she had these marks on her face and to her neighbors. So she made up the lie that a black man had attacked her, which is very common in those days. And that put all these people out, looking for this black man who would attack this white woman. Now comes the mob from Sumner, the little town where this started, with Fannie Taylor marching to Rosewood, to the black community, with torches and rifles and all the apparatus you can imagine to attack this town. They started lynching people, burning the town. It took 4 days before the town was leveled, except for one home, the one belonging to J.W. Wright and his wife, the white man who owned the general store, which was right near the railroad depot. They left his house standing. And one of the stories, Don, that people don't realize about Rosewood is that Mr. Wright and his wife hid black people in their home at their own risk. At night, it was very cold. I want to reiterate that. It was a very, very cold time, January. They would bring some of the people in, women and children, no boys over 13, and hide them upstairs in their bedrooms. Mrs. Wright would cook food, pot of collard greens and grits, and feed them. And in the daytime, they had to get out of the house because the mob might spot them. So the Wright family saved many families from that tragedy. So a train was brought in at night, and they sneaked some of these people out on that railroad train and got them to Gainesville and saved their lives. And then all the black folks left Rosewood, never returned. And about 15 years ago, Don, I purchased 5 acres of land in Rosewood.
You purchased 50 acres?
5 acres. I wish I did have 50.
5 acres?
I got 5 acres of pristine land in Rosewood. When I purchased it, it had not been touched since 1923. And the railroad track ran right through the property that I purchased, which is why I purchased it. It's the only remaining remnant of that railroad track They took the rails out when the company left,
Okay.
but they left the railroad bed is there. And that bed was laid by enslaved men in the 1840s to connect Gainesville and Cedar Key. And that railroad bed to me is sacred because it was the escape route for so many people who managed to survive, and because it's just a relic that we need to keep visible so people can go and walk that railroad track, be in that swamp where these people had to survive for 4 or 5 days on their own. So eventually white people purchased the land, took it by folks not paying taxes or whatever. So Rosewood is now an all-white town. No black people live there. I'm the only black person today who owns land in Rosewood.
So, Marvin, you're the only black person that owns land in Rosewood today.
That's correct. That was a black family back in 1970, late 70s. A veteran and his wife, no kids. They bought property near where my land is, in Rosewood. Had it for about a year. They went into town, and when they came back, the house was on fire. They burned them out, and they never came back. So yeah, my property is the only black-owned property in Rosewood today.
Wow.
And those 5 acres, I've told my kids, if y'all sell my property, I'm gonna come back from the grave and haunt you. We're gonna save those 5 acres of land in Rosewood for history. So the event that we had, because like this shows after we had the event, on the 11th of this month, was to have people come and be present in that space to hear survivors, descendants of people who were involved in this tragedy, to dedicate the land to history, and to make the commitment that we will never forget, as much as Florida tries today to make us forget the tragedies like Rosewood. We won't. We will track down these stories, Don, and I've done that now for 25 years. I've gone to every place in Florida where there was a major lynching and documented it. Talked to people who were descendants of people who did it and who were victims. So whether you're talking about Ocoee, Newberry, Live Oak, I've been to all these places and made films and wrote chapters in my books about these places, because those are the kinds of stories that they're trying to push away from the public, particularly away from kids who are old enough and who need to know that history.
Marvin, what you're talking about is a legacy. How important is this legacy for you personally?
Well, I hope to leave 2 things that are important, other than my kids. One, my written work, which outlasts everything, the written word. And I've done a few books that I think will survive time. And then the second is those 5 acres in Rosewood. 100 years from now, I want people to be able to walk in Rosewood safely and to feel that history. And that's my legacy. I'm going to build a house on my property in Rosewood. It's going to be called the Rosewood Peace House, the Rosewood House of Peace.
Rosewood Peace House.
It's going to be a huge, not huge, it's a big house of the same era, like it would have been in 1923. It's going to be yellow, painted white, and it's going to have a massive great room where 100 people can sit and reconcile and talk and figure stuff out. I don't want to use a bad word, figure stuff out.
Yeah.
Talking together in this sacred space. So that Peace House is a part of our plan for the Rosewood Historic Park. And in 2 years, I will be able to have you come to my house in Rosewood.
Now, what do your kids say about Rosewood? What are they saying about you and this Rosewood initiative that you lived with most of your life?
First thing they said was, "Are you crazy, Dad? Going up there among all those white folks who don't want you or want this story told? Stay home. Why are you doing that?" So caution was the first reaction I got from my kids when they realized that I was involved in this work. I think over the years, though, they have appreciated that this is their responsibility. My work, particularly my work in Rosewood, is their responsibility to keep and carry forward. And they're smart enough. Most of our kids are lawyers, or they married lawyers, so I think they'll be able to protect this legacy as we go forward.
You're bringing up some historical events that will live on way before and beyond you and I living here
Yeah,
on Earth.
yeah.
What will people say about Rosewood after you and I are gone?
They'll say it shouldn't have happened. They'll say that the black people who were affected should have gotten something for it, and they did. The state of Florida did pass the reparations bill.
Now talk about that.
Well, the Florida legislature in 1994 passed the Rosewood reparations bill, which was intended to and did make money available to people who could prove that they were descendants of Rosewood or were survivors of Rosewood. I should tell you about Ruby Morton.
Wow.
Ruby Morton was the last living person who had a memory of Rosewood. She was 8 years old when Rosewood happened. She was living in a senior citizens facility in Riviera Beach. I met her. She was 93 or 94 when I met her, and she let me take her to Rosewood twice.
Wow.
Twice, just me and her.
Ooh.
I pick her up in Riviera, and we go Riviera Beach, and we go to Rosewood. And she walked me through that community. She showed me the Baptist church was over there. The Masonic Lodge was up here. That's where I went to school, she said. When this happened, I was in the 2nd grade. She remembered. Showed me all, that's how I know what's in Rosewood. Ruby Morton took me to Rosewood twice. I took her, and she showed me where stuff is. So I know stuff about where things are in Rosewood only because that lady in her 90s, she's now passed on, showed me what I needed to know to be able to tell that story going forward. Ruby Morton, she was my buddy. She and I watched the Rosewood film together twice because I wanted to know from Miss Morton, does that film really reflect what happened in Rosewood? She said, yeah, it does. This character, man, who was didn't really exist. They sort of overdid that one role. But she said that the film Rosewood did tell the story, and it looked like Rosewood, she said, which is important to her. It looked like it was. She said all the houses in Rosewood were painted white because there was no other color paint in those days. You're going to get white paint and black.
Yeah.
So we didn't have red and yellow or pink. Everybody's house was white, white and black. Most of them were 2-story houses. The black folks in Rosewood had some money. They weren't rich, but they were doing fine. Timbering, turpentine, fishing, hunting, until this mess happened. So I tell the story recognizing that J.W. Wright and his wife, whose graves we will go to, we go to on my tours to Rosewood. But that house, that grave, those places that we still can see physically remaining are places I want people to be able to go and see and recognize as part of this story. So we're trying to save as much of that as we can. Not just what's on my property, but there are things around. Mm-hmm. There's an old well over here. There's something over there we can still sort of piece together what Rosewood was. And I'll share one other thing with you about Rosewood that I just found out on my own. I started going out there just on my own once I knew where it was and what it was, before I purchased property. Mm-hmm. And I went out there one April on a Sunday by myself. And Mrs.
By yourself?
By myself, yeah. I was getting a little too comfortable by then. And I stumbled upon the site where the Methodist Church was, because Ms. Morton had told me the Methodist Church was over there. And I come back that spring, and it looked like the whole woods were on fire. And it was azalea bushes in full bloom that had not been touched in 100 years. Some of them were 12, 15 feet tall. I had never seen anything so gorgeous. And I found out later that many of the folks in Rosewood planted azalea bushes in their yards and roses. So I've started planting azaleas and roses on my property in Rosewood. But just being able to walk that space and realize that even though we don't have access to it, the way it would be great to have access, at least we have enough of it preserved to keep the memory alive and be able to walk the ground.
Wait a minute, you've already seen the movie Rosewood.
Mm-hmm. Twice,
if
2 or 3
you
times.
could rewrite another movie, what would you put in it that wasn't in the original movie? What's missing?
That's a good question. The main thing that's missing in the original movie is what Mr. Wright and his wife did.
Mr. Wright.
J.W. Wright and his wife, who saved those people.
What did they do?
The movie opens with Mr. Wright raping a child, a black child, in his store. This is totally a lie. Mrs. Morton told me she saw they shouldn't have put that up there. Mr. Wright didn't do that. They just did that to make the movie dramatic. He was a kind man who took care of people. But the Rosewood movie opens with him raping a black child in his store. And that didn't happen. And it did not make enough of the fact that there were white people who did the right thing. I have neighbors in Rosewood. They're all white, of course. I was out there one day, Don, and this guy drives up in a pickup truck, gun rack in the back with a rifle and all that. I'm by myself.
Wait, you go up there a lot by yourself.
Not anymore. But
Okay.
I was stupid then.
Okay.
So he drives up, he lets his window down. Well, what are you doing out here? I said, well, this is my property. And I was, oh, really? He said, well, I'm your neighbor. I own the property right across the street here. I'm having some people over tomorrow. This is a Friday. Come by the house and meet the family. So, oh, all right, I'll do that. So sure enough, that next morning I go, he said, come right about 11 o'clock. So I got there about 11, and he and three of his buddies had been there all morning. There were 3 sheets to the wind when I got there drunk. And Don, they told me, the problem with that Rosewood movie, they'd seen it, is it just didn't tell the truth about the white people who tried to help the black people.
Wow.
My aunt, he said, my aunt protected people with a pistol, wouldn't let the mob come to her yard. That they named other people who did the right thing.
Yes.
And the point they were trying to make was that the movie didn't show that there were some people, not enough, who did do the right thing. And I think that's accurate. I think the other thing the movie doesn't show is the emotional toll on the black people. Losing your land, they make that point. They lost their land, they lost their fortunes, but people lost their homes. You know, you can't go back to the Rosewood Cemetery where your ancestors are buried because it's now on private land. So what bothers me that's not covered in the story is the emotional loss, the psychological loss of home. Can you imagine if you could not go back to the place where you were born and walk the streets where your ancestors walked, or go to the cemetery where your ancestors are buried?
That's a missing part of me. Yeah.
So that part needs to be made more understandable by the public. It wasn't just the burned homes and the loss of land and all of that. It was a loss of history.
Wow.
Yeah.
Boy, Marvin, you know something. You're a walking legend. When we talk about Rosewood, coming from Michigan and hearing about Rosewood and knowing about Rosewood in the state of Florida, that was a big event.
Yeah. Well, you know, the state of Florida requires that the Rosewood story be taught in public schools in Florida.
Well, what happened?
The state of, 67 counties in Florida, school districts in Florida, they're all required to teach the Rosewood story. They're also required to teach the Ocoee story, which we haven't talked about. The state of Florida requires those 2 stories to be taught in Florida schools. Surprise, right? It's not happening, but it is required by Florida law. But the way that the law was written is, as those stories are taught, they must be taught in terms of racial violence on both sides. That black people did some violence, and white folks did some violence in both places. So, yeah, but it's kind of a wash, the whole both sides thing. And that is so wrong, so wrong.
Equal access.
Yeah. Sylvester Carey, I don't know if I have time to talk about this, but Sylvester Carey is the black man who was the hero of Rosewood. When this mess started coming down, just Sylvester Carey, who was a veteran, World War I veteran, knew how to use a rifle, didn't work for white people. He was a hunter and a piano teacher. His wife, Gertrude, was a black woman who looked white. A lot of white folks around there didn't like Sylvester for that. So Sylvester was known as an uppity nigger. You didn't just kowtow to what white people wanted to do. So when this whole thing came down, it was said that Sylvester was at the railroad depot with somebody but is talking, and made the statement that if that mob came anywhere near his house, his family, they'd have hell to pay. That got back to the white folks. Sylvester Carey is at the railroad depot talking about, y'all better not come to his house. So those folks were looking for the black man that Fannie Taylor said raped her. They went to Sylvester's house and dared him to come out. Dared him to come out. Now, mind you, when this happened, Sylvester's mother, Sarah Carrier, was at the house, at Fannie Taylor's house when this happened. She was watching for this woman and her family, so she knew what had happened with this man and Fannie Taylor. So the mob comes and Sylvester took his family to his mother's house, to Sarah's house. Children upstairs, his mama and maybe another man in the house with him, and the mob comes demanding Sylvester to come out. And Mrs. Carrier, Sarah Carrier, goes to the window and tries to tell these people, my son didn't have anything to do with this, leave him alone, and they shot her dead. So he sees his mama fall dead in front of him. And then two white men come up onto the porch. They killed the dog first. The dog was barking, shot the dog. And then they come up onto the porch, and Sylvester killed both of them. His mama laying there dead. He shot both of them dead. So there were two white men killed in Rosewood as they were coming into Sylvester Carrier's house after they killed his mama and his dog. And then they burned the town down, and we don't know how many black folks got killed. Wow. But yet the story is equal violence. You know, there were reports, Don, that there was a mass grave in Rosewood. A man who grew up to be a sheriff of Leavitt County, who was a boy at the time, said he saw an open grave with at least 30 bodies in it that was being covered up. So equal violence, but the state of Florida wants to talk, well, some white folks got killed, some black folks got killed, so tell the story, but equal violence.
Violence.
Yeah. Same thing in Ocoee, equal violence.
Wow.
Yeah.
Violence is violence.
Well, it's the proportion. When I look at incidents of racial violence against white people, it happens when black folks are being attacked. I can't cite, I'm sure there are black criminals who attack white people and all of that, but in terms of these racial confrontations that end up in lynchings and all of that,
yeah,
it is every case I know of whites attacking black people and blacks defending themselves.
You know something, Marvin? Racism seems to be something that's been in America for a long time. I'm going to ask you a question, and if you could answer this in 1 minute, try to find it in your heart to answer this. How can we solve the racial divide among people?
You really want my answer to that?
Yes, I do. It's a powerful question. If we can find the answer to solving racism in America, that's the big question.
I think that this is a problem, racism is a problem, that will only be solved through, frankly, in a marriage of the races. Where people come together and we're all eventually just people. But race becomes not a definable issue. We don't have to make, it's moving in that direction anyway, Don. Our society is becoming multiracial, and I think as we become more multiracial, we'll have less racism. I guess that's basically the best way I can put it.
That's a good answer. Yeah. Because America has a heart condition.
Yes, we do.
We have a heart condition.
Especially right now.
Yeah. Man, this is great. It's a joy to be able to talk with you about Rosewood. We're going to continue this series on and on for Black History Month.
All right.
Thank you very much.
All right, you're welcome. My
Marvin
pleasure.
Dunn.